to demand tax fairness for working families and to make certain that the wealthiest people in this country begin to start paying their fair share of taxes. Unfortunately, in 2017, the Trump tax plan, which was supported by every Republican, moved us in exactly the wrong direction. The vast majority of the tax breaks in that proposal went to the wealthiest people in our country and the largest corporations, the people who needed it the least, and it resulted in a $2 trillion increase in our national debt. One of the many negative aspects of the Trump tax plan was to limit deductions on state and local taxes to $10,000. That resulted in millions of middle-class and working-class families being forced to pay more in their federal taxation. That was a regressive and unfair proposal, and this Congress must rectify it. As some of you may know, a proposal has been recently circulating which would completely eliminate the SALT cap. While the $10,000 cap, in my view, is much too low, eliminating the cap entirely would result in a massive tax break for the wealthiest families in this country. The multimillionaires and billionaires who own mansions in exclusive neighborhoods and who can afford to make extremely expensive purchases do not need a tax break. According to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a 5-year complete repeal, which is what some are talking about, would cost roughly $475 billion, with $400 billion of that tax cut going to the top 5%. 475 in total, with 400 of that billion of that tax break going to the top 5%. According to this nonpartisan organization, if this proposal were to go into effect, that's the complete repeal, the top 5% would receive a net tax cut of $30 billion a year, even after including all of the other provisions to increase taxes on the wealthy that are currently in the Build Back Better Act. At a time when Democrats are correctly demanding that the wealthy finally start paying their fair share of taxes, it would be absurd and hypocritical to provide the richest people in this country with a massive tax breaks. And that's not just me or Bob Menendez. That is people like Larry Summers. That is people like Jason Furman, President Obama's former chairman of the Council on Economic Advisors. So, if completely eliminating the cap on state and local tax exemption is regressive and unfair, what is a sensible solution? And to me, the answer is obvious. We should eliminate that cap for families making, roughly speaking, we still got to do a little bit more tweaking here, but roughly speaking, $400,000 or less, not for millionaires and billionaires. And we should make that permanent. This would not only provide tax relief to millions of middle-income and working-class families, it would be deficit neutral. I was delighted to hear from Senator Menendez that he has been working on a very similar perspective on this issue, and our offices have agreed in principle on a compromise proposal that would eliminate the SALT cap on middle-class families who need it the most and ensure that millionaires and billionaires don't receive any of the benefits. Over 10 years, this proposal would be deficit neutral, and the Build Back Better Act would be fully paid for, this is important, by demanding that the wealthiest Americans and most profitable corporations pay their fair share of taxes. We have heard reports that the House may include a proposal to raise the SALT cap to $72,500 for all Americans, including the wealthy. This approach would cost over $50 billion a year and would provide 37% of its benefits to the top 1%. So in other words, this is a better proposal than eliminating the SALT completely, but it still is quite regressive. We should not be substantially increasing taxes on the top 1%, not giving the wealthiest people in the country a huge tax break. So with that, let me introduce Senator Menendez and thank him very much for his work on this.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. We're here to obviously address the ongoing negotiations on the SALT cap deduction, and I'm pleased to join Chairman Sanders on this important issue. It has always been my view that the SALT deduction should benefit hardworking families. Recent proposals that provide a temporary reprieve in exchange for an extension of the cap are a bait and switch. They won't benefit families struggling to pay property taxes, but they will benefit millionaires and billionaires who see this as a windfall to avoid paying their fair share. We are convinced any SALT relief should be targeted to the families that need it the most. And we are optimistic that we can reach an agreement soon to solve this issue without going against President Biden's pledge on not raising taxes to families making under $400,000 a year in a permanent way. And I believe from our discussions we can achieve this by making it a revenue neutral cap, a deficit neutral cap. Now, that would give, for example, full relief to 98% of New Jersey property taxpayers, and I would dare say that's probably true in most of the other states that have been affected negatively by the cap. What the revenue neutral is a number that we'll have to determine. From my perspective, it could go as high as $550,000, and we'll see what the numbers come forth at. This deduction also provides the ability of blue chip states like New Jersey to support communities to raise their own revenues and fund critical investments in public education, infrastructure, social services, and public safety. It was never meant to be a tax write-off for the rich. In this regard, I have said time and time again, there is a reason that New Jersey is a blue chip state, a maker state. We donate more revenue to the federal treasury than other states that sometimes I call a moocher state, a state that receives far more than they contribute to the federal treasury. In order to continue to be a blue chip state, a maker state, the state and local property tax deduction is critical so that those investments can be made that continue to generate the economic engine that states like New Jersey have been. Now, the House has a different path or a different way at looking at this, and you know, I agree, it could be better than the total repeal, but we think this is a better way, and we would hope to be able to work it out in terms of the different views, and I believe we can. In conclusion, we cannot afford to get it wrong. It's time to get this done and to get it done right. There's no time to waste on gimmicks. Hardworking American families depend on this deduction, and we need to deliver real relief, and I believe that in a revenue-neutral way we can do exactly just that.
Senator Menendez, do you know if Leader Schumer supports this approach?
You'll have to ask Leader Schumer. I mean, I have informed Leader Schumer of what our intention is here and what we seek to do, and so I am sure that he can speak for himself as to whether he supports it or not. Yeah.
Sir, you've received tens of thousands of dollars from the pharmaceutical companies. You've also opposed some measures to lower drug prices for seniors. I'm curious what message that sends.
Well, this is on SALT, and I'm happy to take questions on topic. Bottom line is I'm supporting a price negotiation bill that has been worked out with Chairman Wyden that will deliver real benefits for what I've said since the very beginning of the discussion. How do we ensure that consumers at the counter get relief? And you know, can I finish my answer? And the bottom line is that's exactly what it will do. It will cost the industry several $100 billion, but it will give real relief. It will put caps on insulin and a whole host of other things. So I believe that's a good one. I'm going to answer SALT questions. If you'd like to get me later, you can. And Bernie, if you want to answer SALT questions.
What pressure did last night's election results put on you guys to finalize this SALT agreement, especially when you have multiple House Democrats who are in swing districts who have been fighting for SALT renewal? This would be helpful to the message.
For me, none. We've been working towards a goal similar to this, and so for me, last night was not indicative of anything that's brought together today.
I agree, that's the case. We've been working on this for a very long period.
Senators, have you spoken to your House colleagues who are working on this on a parallel track? Why are there two separate proposals coming out now at this time?
Well, I think for a start, what's most important is there is now an understanding that it would be totally unacceptable from a financial and a political point of view to give massive tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country by completely repealing the SALT exemptions, the SALT cap. The House, as Senator Menendez mentioned, is moving in a different direction. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to come forward with something that will protect, I guess in New Jersey, you think 98% of the people? I mean, that's what we're talking about. That's what we have to do. And yet make sure that the wealthy do not get a tax break. Yes, ma'am.
Senators, I want to clarify your proposal. Is the idea that you guys won't have changed the specific $10,000 cap, but you would exempt people up to a certain income threshold from being subject to the cap?
Correct. And it would be permanent, yes.
Right, and that would be somewhere between 400,000 and 550,000.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Senator, do you perceive obstacles making it permanent given the barriers of the reconciliation process?
No, I don't. I mean, I think making it permanent makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. And making it deficit neutral also makes sense for a lot of reasons. Yes, ma'am.
Senator Sanders, the two senators from Virginia said that the House delay on passing the bipartisan infrastructure bill was to blame in part for the election results last night. You supported the progressive methods and strategy in the House. What is your response to that? And then Senator Menendez, what is your takeaway from the election in New Jersey?
Well, I tell you, I would like to stay on SALT here. We can talk about that later. I'm happy to answer that, but not right now. Let's stay on SALT. This is a huge issue. Yeah.
Senator, on the subject of SALT, one of your colleagues told me today that he thinks the political messaging on SALT has been terrible and is partly to blame for the poor performances in Virginia and in New Jersey yesterday. Do you agree with him?
What has been the political messaging on SALT?
Well, exactly what you're articulating here is that it's a huge, it's huge.
Well, that's not a question of messaging. No, it's not messaging. That's reality. In other words, I mean, the point that I speak for myself here, but we have heard for months and months and months from Democratic colleagues that we are sick and tired of seeing the wealthiest people in this country, including multi-billionaires, and some years pay nothing in federal income taxes. American people are disgusted with that. You go and ask them, it's probably their top priority. They want action. So that if somebody comes up with a proposal that says, yeah, we're going to give even more tax breaks to these people, it's not a question of messaging. That is terrible, terrible policy. That's bad policy. And that's what Senator Menendez and I are trying to change.
Have you talked to the SALT caucus folks?
The SALT caucus.
The House folks that
I have talked to some people, yes.
Pepper, I mean, have you talked to them about have you talked to them
The
about
Pepper caucus and the SALT, yeah.
have you talked to them about whether
I've talked to some people in the House. I don't know if Senator Menendez can.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a SALT caucus. I'm not sure who's the members of the SALT caucus. Let me just say that for the longest period of time, the driver of trying to get a reinstatement of some form of appropriate SALT relief, I've been at the lead of that. So if I think that this is a good proposal, I would think, and if I say to my New Jersey colleagues, for example, that 98% of everybody in New Jersey will get full SALT relief, and we will make it revenue neutral, I think that's a hard position to be against, but I don't know what their position is. I've talked to some individuals. I don't know if they're members of the SALT caucus or not. So.
they were the folks that said they wouldn't vote to move things forward without the SALT.
Yes.
Just to make sure I understand this, you would make this, by saying you'd make this permanent, you're saying the $10,000 would be a permanent
Yes.
cap?
Yes.
Okay, so extended past 2025, but there would be an exemption for most income, most.
Exemption for people under 400 or 500, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. All right, thank you all very much.